Before I get started, I just want to apologize in advance. If you hear the sounds of a baby crying, that is my daughter. We had a big change in the house this week, and she's having a little bit of trouble adjusting. She's completely fine. It's just, babies. But everything's fine. So, a lot of stuff to talk about, mainly with AEW and the big week they've had with All In and now All Out happening next weekend. Why they have two pay-per-views that close to each other, I have no earthly idea. But there's a lot to talk about with AEW. We've got Bash in Berlin happening this weekend from WWE. Definitely want to talk about that. And, let's go ahead and get started. So before I talk about any of the modern or current events in professional wrestling, I do want to come on here and pay tribute to Sid, who recently passed away a couple days ago. And, it's always sad when we lose a wrestling legend, and unfortunately we've lost so many of them, and especially from the era from when I was a kid. So many of them are gone now, and this is yet another one. But Sid was one of those guys that... and I was on the internet back in the late 90s, and I listened to the way that people used to talk about people like Sid, like Hogan, like Scott Steiner, and, Lex Luger, like a lot of those guys. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. They don't have great matches, and the work rate is not good, and that type of thing. You've heard it all before. And Sid is one of the guys I always look to where I'm like, who gives a crap about star ratings and work rate, when Sid is a guy who looks like $1,000,000, looks legitimately intimidating, cuts fantastic promos when, he's had his flubs from time to time, but overall, like, when he's on, he is flipping on. And, great look and a very unique talent for his time. When I started watching at age 5 or 6, I think Sid was the first guy I remember seeing that was like a big guy, tall guy, that had an impressive athletic physique, and he was still intimidating. So it just goes to show you didn't have to have like a King Kong Bundy style body type to be an intimidating monster. You didn't have to be a Yokozuna or an Earthquake. And I like those guys too. It was just Sid was different, and really changed my perception of what a big man or a giant is in professional wrestling. And he was the first guy his size that I remember seeing that would do moves like the choke slam and the power bomb, which are now staples of big men in wrestling. So Sid left his mark. He was definitely a huge influence and one of the most unique talents of his time, because he was so radically different and he had such a great look. And it's easy to see why he's a former WCW champion, why he's a former WWE champion, one of the few to hold both. And he even got over in ECW for his brief run there, which is like, a lot of former WWE guys and WCW guys, it was like they almost would have to like radically change themselves to get over in ECW, because it was just a completely different environment and a different animal altogether. Sid didn't have that problem. He was just go be Sid. Go be what makes you a star, and it's going to work. And Sid was one of those guys that just got over everywhere he went. It's easy to see why, because he looked like a star. And I've heard Bret Hart talk about it in shoot interviews, like his rankings of people's abilities in pro wrestling. So it's like you get a score out of 30, 10 points for look, 10 points for promos, and 10 points for how you perform in the ring. Sid's like a 10 out of 10 look, no question. Promos, I'd say, is about an 8 or a 9. And in-ring, probably his weakest area, about probably a 5. So it's like, I'll take a 25 out of 30 any day, if we're judging it off that scale. And he did have some really good matches. I mentioned it on Twitter, but my favorite Sid matches are the Halloween Havoc match he had with with Sting, the 93 one. The Survivor Series match with Shawn Michaels, where he got cheered over Shawn, and he assaulted a senior citizen with a camera and still got cheered and won the title. It was one of the greatest things ever. I loved it. That was so much fun. And the Halloween Havoc 99 match with Bill Goldberg, which I've mentioned before on this channel, I've put over heavily. If you have not seen that match, go check that match out. You want to talk about a slobber knocker. You want to talk about hard-hitting violence. And they didn't even do that much, but by the time it was over, you felt like you just watched a shoot. It was just an amazing, brutal display from two very unique talents that are, again, considered limited, but had star potential in matches like that, demonstrated what their star potential really was if you let them do what they needed to do to that what made them stars in the first place. So I could sit here all day and talk about so many great Sid moments, and I remember when he was in WWF, and this was right after Royal Rumble '92, where he got cheered over Hogan, famously. Another great Sid moment. But I remember how excited I was for that Saturday night's main event match, where it was Undertaker and Flair taking on Sid and Hogan in a big main event tag match. The first Fox Saturday night's main event. And I remember how excited I was for that match. It was one of those, like, I'm not missing this type of deals. And it's hard to imagine a tag match could get that kind of response out of me nowadays, but there was so much star power in there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was the only Saturday night's main event match for Flair, Undertaker, and Sid. So that's a bit of an anomaly in the history of that particular event, which is one of my favorite, programs in WWE history, for sure, wrestling history overall as well. And he's got that unique match under his belt. I was all about the Masters of the Powerbomb, Sid and Vader, the stuff heading into Beach Blast 93. And I was like, that was one of those. It was them versus Bulldog and Sting, and they did the bizarre cinematics on the beach with them. And that was another one where I was like, I'm not missing that match. I just love the concept that two guys that had the Powerbomb as their finisher called themselves the Masters of the Powerbomb. And I'm like, yeah, these guys rule, because I was a big Vader fan. I was a big Sid fan at the time. Sting was my WCW babyface, so I loved him. And I liked Bulldog. Bulldog was never a favorite per se, but I liked him a lot. And, going into that match, I was like, I'm not missing that match. I have to see that match. And so that was another one that I really fondly remember. So, Sid, for all the perceived limitations that he had, he definitely left his mark in pro wrestling and was the centerpiece of a lot of great memories that I have as a wrestling fan. So I just want to pay my respects to the passing of Sid, my condolences to his family, and if you're a younger fan and you don't know that much about Sid, I recommend checking some of his stuff out, because he was definitely a very unique talent. So just wanted to get all of that out there. But let's get into the current events. So All In 2024, AEW's big show in Wembley. I would say the show was a success overall. They didn't get nearly the gate that they did last time. I don't know. The last year was like 70-some K. Now it's like, this year was like 50-some K. So I don't know. And there were parts in the event where on camera it looked like there were huge parts of it that were empty. But that's the dangers of running a stadium setting. But overall, I thought the show came off really well. Let me pull up the card. And we will go over each match one by one. So, we had 3 matches on the pre-show. 2 of them multi-person. All of them were tag matches, but we had a 16-man tag and a 10-man tag, which is a bit much, but whatever. The first match was basically a mini battle royal, and it was like, all right, it's fine, I guess. Perfect for a pre-show match, for a show like this. You got the mixed tag with Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii defeating Statlander and Stokely Hathaway, which is pretty much what you would expect. Stokely got his comeuppance, got beat up by Ishii. That's pretty much all you would want out of this match, and it worked in that regard. And we got the feel-good team of the Von Erichs, Sammy Guevara, Shibata, and Dustin Rhodes defeating the Undisputed Kingdom in the Cage of Agony. Somebody really... when I saw Sammy Guevara go out there in Wolverine gear, and Dustin was also doing Deadpool gear, which is topical right now given the movie, which I still haven't seen, but I hear it's great. And Cage came out in Wolverine gear, and I'm like, I really feel like that should have been discussed beforehand, so you don't have 2 guys on opposing sides dressed as Wolverine, because that just looks really weird. It looks like they're on the same team, and that's kind of a bizarre flub. But Dustin Rhodes right now is kind of one of the feel-good elements of AEW, where he's the trios champion or 6-man tag champion in ROH with the Von Erichs, another feel-good element, which it's good to have them around. And Dustin Rhodes recently won the ROH tag titles with Sammy Guevara, which caused me to just sit here and go just have Dustin win all the ROH belts. I don't care. I mean, it's Ring of Honor. Who cares? Let's be honest. Who would get really, really upset if Dustin Rhodes won the Ring of Honor World title at this point. It would just be like, just have him win them all and then start unifying and getting rid of a bunch of those belts. But in any case, this was fine for what it was. Again, like, feel good. Let Dustin do their thing. Let the Von Erichs do their thing and pop the crowd and do all that other fun stuff. So that was fine. And another thing that happened on the pre-show was the return of Jamie Hayter to attack Saraya. So it looks like we're probably going to get that match at All Out, if I had to guess. That match will take place there. I was kind of hoping, because this came off really well, I thought. Jamie Hayter returning in front of her hometown crowd. Saraya having legitimate beef over, I was in the title match and won the belt last year, and now I'm not even on the card. This is bullcrap. I probably would have done something where they do this segment on the pre-show, and then Tony Schiavone comes out and says, I have an announcement from Tony Khan. You will have a match later tonight with a mystery opponent, and then do like Jamie Hayter's return on the show, and then have her like win like a quick like 2 or 3 minute match or something. Just as like a fun piece of filler. You still get the moment and everything, and I think it would have played well. But overall, I thought it, for what it was, is pre-show material, I thought it came off well. I've just always been a proponent of like using the pre-show to kind of create like last minute angles or last minute things to kind of like generate a tad more interest in the pay-per-view. And Saturday Night Heat used to do that back in the Attitude Era days. I think the best example of it working that I can think of was actually a TNA example, Slammiversary 2005, where Jeff Jarrett was in the King of the Mountain match, and you thinking, okay, Jeff's going to win that match, obviously. It's just how it's poised to be. But then Jeff Jarrett attacked a fan on the pre-show, and he was removed from the match because he got arrested, and Raven had to take his place. And I remember, I wasn't watching the show that night. I was reading the results because I was at work that night. But I was reading the results as they were coming in. I heard that. I was like, wait, what? What just happened? What? And things like that add a little bit of extra spice to the pay-per-view. Don't do it all the time, because then it's like the Shyamalan twist. It just becomes expected. But once in a while, to liven things up a little bit, I think is kind of fun. But anyway, the pre-show was actually mostly enjoyable for the most part. Then we kicked off the main show with the 4-way London ladder match, which looked like every single ladder match I've seen for the last 20 years. I am sick of these matches. I go on these rants all the freaking time. This was for the trios titles. There were 4 teams involved, so there was 12 people involved. All of this was just went in one ear and out the other with me. Like, I saw it, didn't process any of it, and none of it landed, none of it stuck with me. I'm sick of these matches. These matches do nothing for me. Whatever. It was a whatever. Again, these matches are just a whatever. Pac, Claudio, and Wheeler Yuta won. Somebody in that company really believes in Wheeler Yuta, and I've said this with AEW before. It's like, you have a guy like Wardlow, who legitimately got over, and they did everything in their power to screw him up. And then you have these other guys like Top Flight, like Action Andretti, like Daniel Garcia, like Wheeler Yuta, that somebody backstage really likes, and I see little to no star power there. Daniel Garcia's getting better. At least he has a goofy dance that kind of sets him apart from everybody else. And his promo, on Dynamite against MJF, not bad. Better than what I would expect from him. But, like, Wheeler Yuta is one of those guys, I just don't see it, and I don't see what AEW sees in him. Top Flight, my favorite thing about them is Layla Gray in the stewardess getup, and I'm like, wow, that looks nice. But other than that, it's like, y'all got nothing. This whole match was just a big load of nothing. There was a title change for the sake of a title change, although I guess they justified it later in the show, but whatever. Moving on from that, we got, I will say there were 2 matches on this card that I really, really, really enjoyed. And what I mean by that is, if I was going to do a match of the year for 2024, my 2 picks are Sting's retirement match and Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania. One made me cry and gave me all the nostalgic feels, and I got tears in my eyes by the time it was over. I got to say goodbye to Sting. That was wonderful. And then at WrestleMania, we had the big, cameo-laden explosion that was that main event that culminated with Roman finally losing the belt to Cody Rhodes. So that obviously worked. Those would be my 2 picks. As far as pay-per-view matches are concerned, since then, there's been some matches I've enjoyed, but none that really stuck with me or anything. Like Cody and AJ is a perfect example of that, where it's like, all right, we know Cody's going to win. There's not a lot of intrigue here. They went out there bell to bell, did their thing, made it work, and it was enjoyable for what it was, but it didn't have any kind of lasting impression on me because it wasn't a payoff to a major story. Nothing major happened, nothing shocking happened. It was just the typical good match you expect out of those two. So since WrestleMania, there haven't been any matches on AEW or WWE that I felt like, man, that was amazing. I loved it. And most of them I saw, and I'm like, yeah, that was good. And then a couple weeks later, I've completely forgotten about it. So, but this show had two matches that I really, really enjoyed that I think I'm going to remember for a while. The first of those was the AEW Women's World Championship match between Mariah May and Timeless Toni Storm. I thought this was great. I thought this match came off really, really well. They had a great build-up heading into it with the big storyline and everything. And I thought this all came off really, really well. And it culminated with Mariah May winning the title, which I think a lot of us expected, but was appropriate given the strength of the storyline that they had. So I thought this match was absolutely stellar. I thought they killed it. I thought it lived up to the hype. It lived up to the potential provided to them by the storyline that they had told up to this point. Excuse me. And I thought it came off really well. I thought it was great. Now, Mariah May is teased doing like a nude celebration or something, which they didn't do on Dynamite this week. I don't know like where this is going to go. I'm getting live sex celebration vibes from Edge and Lita. And I don't know. I'm one of the few that defended that segment, but hey, whatever. So we'll see where that goes, and we'll see how Mariah does as champion. But I thought this match was great and completely lived up to its hype. Then we got the FTW match, Hook versus Chris Jericho, which was okay, I guess. The audience seemed to like Big Bill. That was kind of funny. But, yeah, Hook almost like didn't get that great of a reception during this match. But, and some of the stuff they did was a little silly, like the cricket balls, using that as like the throw them into the pit of things spot. Doesn't really work because balls roll around, so that didn't quite get over. But Hook using the cricket balls as a weapon to just toss and hit into Chris, that worked. It was all right. I don't think the FTW championship should exist as a championship in AEW. It should be like Hook's prop, and that's it. They've got too many belts as it is, and then they have this thing floating around that doesn't really mean anything, but whatever. Hook won, and Chris got to sing his theme song, which I didn't even know was a Fozzy song. I think I should have known that, but I don't know. I think Judas sounded better as an entrance theme, but that's just me. This match, it was what it was. Thank God it wasn't too long. That's the nicest thing I can say about it. And Taz getting involved at the end was actually pretty cool. I did pop for Taz, so there was that. Then we got the tag title match, three-way match, the Young Bucks successfully defending against FTR and the Acclaim. Match itself, I barely remember what happened in it. It was another one of those, if you have a tag match that has more than 4 people in it, they just kind of all devolve into like a spot fest. And I've talked about it with ladder matches. It's more annoying with ladder matches, but this one, again, it was just a three-way tag that I've seen a million times before. It didn't really leave much of an impression, but the debut of the Grizzled Young Veterans was a nice surprise, nice little way to bolster AEW's tag team division. We'll see how they do and see who they work with and what matches they're able to have moving forward. But overall, this was fine. Nothing to write home about, but the debut was the big part. Then we got the Casino Gauntlet match, which was fun, although the rules kind of confused me a little bit because it didn't seem to work like any other casino battle royale that AEW had done up to that point. But there were some nice surprises along the way, like Nigel McGuinness getting back in the ring was a huge welcome surprise. Ricochet's AEW debut, which I don't think surprised a lot of people, but doing it here on the big stage worked. Hangman Page did not win like I thought he would. I thought he was a shoo-in to win this. Did not. And I'm like, all right. They did the whole thing where Christian stole yet another title shot to win it. And I'm like, okay, well, they could probably do something. I wasn't expecting that, and it was a nice little twist in the story. I don't know how many times they're going to have Luchasaurus / Killswitch, lay down and let Christian win all these matches and how long that's going to go. But for right now, he's like, all right, it's a nice little wrinkle in the storyline that or in like the proceedings that Christian would earn the title shot. And like I said, Christian's one of the better heels in the company right now. So I was like, yeah, sure, it's fine. He can work with Bryan Danielson, and I think it'll be completely fine. I also, once again, popped for Jeff Jarrett, who's become like one of my favorite people to watch in wrestling. I've always liked Jeff. I've always liked him. And to see him performing as well as he is, in his mid to late 50s, I'm like, yeah, good for Jeff. Good for Jeff. I hope he wins a match. Well, he did win on Collision last last week. But yeah, this was fun and a nice little, like, I guess a big filler match in kind of the middle of the show. So yeah, I had no problem with this. Then we got Will Ospreay defeating MJF to become the new international champion, de-christening that belt. The American title, it is back to being the international title. I liked the 1 hour match they had on Dynamite more. I thought this match was overall really good, though. One of the better matches on the show. Yeah, it was just a really good match. Again, and nowhere near as good as the 1 hour match they had, but I guess it was a decent setup for the MJF Daniel Garcia match that we'll be seeing it All Out, but we'll have to take that as it comes. But overall, yeah, MJF and Will Ospreay I thought was pretty good. Pretty good. Not my favorite match on the show, but it was pretty good. Then we got the TBS Championship, Mercedes Moné successfully defending against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. This was like half of a good match where I kind of was like losing interest, and then they would do something to perk me back up, and it was like, okay, this is going well, and then they'd lose my interest again, and then they would perk me back up with some of the crazy spots that they did, like the avalanche body slam, and Britt pulling the Eddie Guerrero to get Camille ejected, where, I don't know, she was almost risking getting Mercedes disqualified, which would have cost her the title, so it was kind of a bold strategy caught, but it actually worked out kind of. Mercedes won, which I don't think surprised anybody, but overall I thought the match was fine, maybe didn't live up to the level of hype that was put onto it. I'm still not completely sold on Mercedes moving forward, and we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. She's one that I'm kind of becoming more and more convinced. It's like, I think she needed WWE more than they needed her. But whatever. The match was not a fiasco or anything like that. It was fine. It was just completely fine. The Mariah Toni Storm match I thought was much, much better. I think part of the problem with this match too is that it was probably about 5 minutes too long. This is one where you could have shaved some time off, and I think it would have come off fine. Jack Perry successfully defended the AEW TNT Championship in a coffin match against Darby Allin, where he basically destroyed Darby Allin. This was kind of a squash, if you look at it. It was an extremely one-sided match, which makes sense since Jack Perry's getting the title shot against Danielson at All Out, so I guess they wanted him to look pretty dominant heading into that big title match. I popped for Sting, post-match, saving Darby from being set on fire and murdered live on pay-per-view. So it was cool to see Sting. That was nice. Yeah, the match was... I was expecting this to be like the wild hardcore match of the show, and it was-ish, but it was so one-sided that... with Darby being handcuffed for most of it and getting wailed on for most of it, that it didn't quite... I don't think it reached classic status or anything like that. But as far as, like, setting up Jack Perry as a potential contender to Bryan Danielson, I guess that was effective enough. All Out doesn't really matter. I don't think this show should be happening, quite honestly. But if you have to have that pay-per-view and you have to have a title match, I'm like, yeah, I guess it's Perry and Danielson, I guess is fine. Then we got the main event. Bryan Danielson defeating Swerve Strickland to become the AEW World Champion. This was fantastic. This match was great. The crowd was all into it. They accepted the story. And there were multiple times throughout this match where I thought, that's it. Bryan's going to lose. And he didn't. He survived, persevered. His family was at ringside, which created some memorable emotional moments. And I guess being a dad now, and I look at Bryan's daughter there, and I think of my daughter, and I was like, oh man, this get me in the feels. This is like, being a dad, like it really does change you and make you see things a little bit differently. But I thought this match was fantastic. I thought it came off great, and Bryan won, which surprised me. I thought for sure Swerve was going to win, and I was completely wrong here, and pleasantly so. It was a very nice moment, came off really, really well, and now we have the storyline moving forward that Bryan says, when I lose the title, that will be my retirement match. So I will keep going until I lose, which instantly raises the stakes of every title match moving forward. Now, I don't think Jack Perry's going to beat him. I don't think Christian's going to beat him. But once you get past that, it's like, okay, who's going to beat him? Would it be Jon Moxley, who seems to be doing his own thing right now, which This week's Dynamite, that was probably the most intriguing part coming out of this week's Dynamite. It was like, what's he doing with Marina Shafir? What is he talking about where he says it's not your company anymore? Is this going to lead into Shane McMahon's debut with AEW? Who knows? We don't know. But it's they got me hooked with that one. And I've talked about it, and this has been one of my criticisms with AEW, where they focus so much on the in-ring product and delivering great matches every week that they don't do a lot of story hooks to kind of like... The goal of the TV show to make me interested in seeing what comes next. And they don't do that as much. They just fill it with action and they expect me to go, whoa, that action was great, 5 stars. I'm going to tune in next week. Like, no, you got to like give me something to sink my teeth into. You got to give me Scott Hall walking in and saying, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. Stuff like that drives interest in a wrestling product, not 5-star matches every week. And I think AEW's learned that lesson the hard way, unfortunately, when you look at how much their audience has decreased since they initially debuted. But hopefully this is the start of something big. We'll see. The Devil storyline didn't play out well at all, and hopefully this turns out better than that. But again, we shall see. And so we've got that, and that was All In, which I thought... Again, overall, pretty entertaining show. It's typical length of an AEW pay-per-view, actually longer because it was a 2-hour pre-show. Didn't feel long, which is rare for shows like this. This one actually went by pretty quickly, and that, pacing has always been one of my issues with AEW pay-per-views, but this one kind of went by, and I thought last year's show was paced really well too, so I don't know what they did differently. I don't know what they do differently with All In that makes it different from all their other pay-per-views, but those most AEW pay-per-views feel long. This one didn't feel long, and I don't know. It generally came off fairly well. Now, I do have the card for All Out pulled up, so I might as well just preview that now. It's happening next weekend, which I will not be seeing it next week. I'm going to be busy doing something else. Stay tuned. Something coming up that I'm going to be talking about on this channel around that same time period, so be on the lookout for that. But right now we have Will Ospreay versus Pac for the International Championship, Willow versus Statlander in a Chicago street fight. Hopefully that's the end of that feud. MJF versus Daniel Garcia, Swerve Strickland versus Hangman Page in a steel cage match, and the aforementioned AEW World Title match, Bryan Danielson versus Jack Perry. And like I said, we're probably going to get Saraya versus Jamie Hayter thrown onto the card as well. So, it's like this card shouldn't be happening. It's way too soon after a pay-per-view. But as is, it's like, okay, well, it doesn't look terrible. And that's kind of how I feel about WWE's upcoming show, Bash in Berlin, a show happening in Germany, and is most likely going to be main evented by the Gunther match, I would expect. It'll be Randy Orton versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. I will eat my freaking hat if Gunther loses that match. There is no way in holy heck he's losing this match. And that's part of the problem with a lot of their recent shows. WWE, I think, I think they've really subscribed to the long-term title reigns, and so much so that so many of the matches feel pointless. And that's and matches like, it'll be big because it's in Gunther's home. Who's going to be the hometown boy. And it's going to feel like a big deal, so it'll have that going for it. But there's no way Randy Orton's winning that belt. There's just no way. And unfortunately, most of the pay-per-view matches feel like that. And then on their TV shows, a lot of the time, one of the biggest problems with their week-to-week programming is that a lot of it kind of feels like they're doing the same things every week to kind of create the illusion of a long-term story when really they're just kind of repeating stuff over and over again. Best example recently was with the Temu bloodline. I love that term for it. When they were powerbombing everybody through tables week after week after week. After a while, you kind of forget who's getting powerbombed through the table and just feel like you saw the same thing 3 or 4 times in a row. To me, it's like something big should happen, and then there should be some kind of a follow-up to it. It's like, okay, this happened then, and then this happened because of it. And instead it's like, let's just do the same thing over and over again and cut the same promos over and over again and use it to create the illusion of a long-term story. But in any case, I would think that Gunther and Randy Orton would main event this pay-per-view, given the setting. Gunther's going to win. We've got Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens for the Undisputed Championship. Please, like, Cody's winning. I would be tempted to have Kevin go over just to kind of throw a wrinkle into things, but Cody's winning. Come on, there's no chance of a title change here. We got CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre in a strap match. Punk will probably get his win back here. This will probably... it's one of the more exciting feuds going on right now, although I am fully on Drew McIntyre's side at this point. He's the babyface in my eyes. Punk kind of sucks. It's like, I'm Taylor Swift for men. It's like, man, you're lame. Stop being lame and be cool and eating muffins and ruining media scrums. Be that guy. That's the Punk we all like. Well, that's the Punk we all love to hate. But anyway, I imagine Punk would probably win that match. We've got a women's tag title match, the Unholy Union defending against Bianca and Jade Cargill. I completely missed that title chain. When did... Like, I heard it was a triple threat match where Bianca and Jade Cargill lost the titles. I completely missed that somewhere along the line, but it tells you how much how invested I am in the women's tag team division right now in WWE. And another match on the show that I feel is one of the bigger attractions on the show, given the storyline, and that's the Judgment Day, Dirty Dom and Liv Morgan taking on the Terror Twins. That is a terrible name. They need Vince Russo back to be naming some of these things, because it's like the Terror Twins. That's awful. That's awful, awful, awful. He would have some kind of like Vince Russo would come up with some kind of wacky name that is an acronym for BDSM or something like that, and have that for Damian and Rhea Ripley or something. I don't know. Like, it would be better than the Terror Twins. And what was that? I forget the name of the other one that Shayna Baszler's group has. I'm like, God, that name's terrible. They should hire Vince Russo back for the sole purpose of just naming groups and tag teams. And I think it would be much better off. But anyway, yeah, Damian and Rhea Ripley will probably get some measure of revenge over Dirty Dom and Liv here. And we'll see how that goes. So, Bash in Berlin happening this weekend. Hopefully it turns out really well. But yeah, I don't hate the card. I'm just not overly excited to see anything on there. And it's like, man, thank God there's no longer those $50 price tags for WWE pay-per-views, because I probably wouldn't spend the $50 on those. But anyway, I will see that show, and I will give my thoughts on it at a later time. But I think that's all I have for you now. Like I said in my last video, if you have any ideas for future videos that you want me to cover, topics in or outside of wrestling, I'm all ears. I'm open to suggestions. I've gotten a few suggestions already, and I'm definitely going to take those ideas under advisement and see what I can do with them. But and if you want to submit questions for any upcoming question and answers videos that I do, you are free to do so. Just submit them to the email address listed in the description below. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. I hope you all have a great Labor Day weekend, and I will see you all later.